what? You're on your first podcast, buddy. And you're only like 12 days old.
This is the youngest
podcaster
guest in the history of podcast.
Yeah.
Welcome everyone to episode 4 of Authentic as Fuck podcast. So last week we had Michael here.
Yeah.
While you were in labor, or right after. I think the day after, right?
Yeah. A couple days after, yeah.
So yeah, you missed out. You missed out on the fun.
I know.
It was, I think, one of the most interesting, and there was a lot of controversy. I don't know if you saw that post on my Instagram.
Dude. Yeah. I told him about it. I don't know if he's commented on it, but I was like, man, there's a lot.
I don't think he has time to read through all that comments. There was a lot.
There was a lot. It was a super interesting discussion, though, I thought.
I thought so too. I think a lot of people don't think of authenticity the way that we usually talk about it, right? In Mass Free program.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah.
Well, and Michael has talked about before, he actually has, I found this I'm going to call it a vintage video that I found way back. It was a Marco Polo video that he did. And we ended up posting it on his YouTube to define the difference between authenticity and honesty. Okay. And I saw some of that in the comments. It's
can you summarize it for us?
Essentially, honesty is black and white. There's true and there's false. It's a lie or it's not, right? So honesty is more binary, and there is a single truth. But authenticity is being true to yourself. So one of the examples that Michael always uses is Tony Soprano. And he's Tony Soprano likes to kill people. That's his jam. He's into that. He's being authentic to himself. That doesn't mean that he's not
he's honest.
That doesn't mean he's honest. That doesn't mean that what he does is right. That doesn't mean any of these more binary definitions in life, but he's living a life true to himself. As far as we know. Does that make sense?
So authenticity, being authentic doesn't necessarily mean that's the right thing. That's a moral thing to do.
Right. Yeah. Exactly. And he talks about how it took him years and a lot of research, and Michael talks about that, how long it took him to kind of come up with this definition of authenticity, because even people, as he was writing the book, I think in that process, a lot of times the word honesty would get used, and he would, be like, it's not about being honest. It's necessarily maybe that's a part of it, right? But it's really living a life true to whoever you are, whether it's right or wrong or morally accepted. So I don't know if that makes sense.
So should everybody be? So not everyone should be authentic. Tony Soprano probably shouldn't be authentic.
Yeah, that'd be great if he didn't kill as many people. The world would thank him.
I mean, I think Donald Trump is another good example, right? He's being true to himself, right? He's being authentic to himself.
Is he though? Is he?
I think so.
I don't know. I mean, that's a whole.
I think that's
talk about comments. We could get a lot of comments. If we go down this train.
I think that's why he's so many people are drawn to him, right? That's why so many people either hate him or drawn to him, right? It's because some of the shit he says is so outrageous, but I don't think he's saying them in a dishonest way. I think he truly believes the shit that he's saying.
Yeah, potentially. Who knows? I mean, yeah.
There's a difference between someone who I rather I prefer to trust somebody who's dumb and authentic than somebody who's smart, who knows those mistakes, but like is dishonest, for example, which is what like most politicians are, in my opinion.
Yes. Most politicians, they're not standing up there saying they don't know, or I messed up, or anything like that makes them look weaker.
Yeah. I'd rather know exactly where you stand. Like if you're evil, I'd rather know that you're evil, right?
Just put it out there.
Yeah,
I'm evil.
Like at least I know to stay away from you, you know?
Yeah. Thanks for making that clear. I'm going to go this way. Yeah, no, I think it's also just like I don't know, very personal definition. I mean, it just, all the comments that I read just felt very like people have a very personal opinion and connect to what that word means for them.
It confused me. Like that's why I would love to have, like, next time Michael's on, I would love to go deeper into like the whole, because like I think there's also another layer of authenticity, which is like what people refer to as like your authentic self, like like your true self that you have to cultivate through like meditation and self-inquiry and all of that, which I think is like even a deeper layer, right? Like most people don't know. Like, for example, I think a lot of people, like I hear this with a lot of lawyers, like a lot of lawyers like hate their job, but some of them feel like they've lived that life so long that that's them, but it's not like their authentic self, right? So that's even like a deeper layer of that, right? Outside of just being fake or anything like that, you know?
Yes. I think you're so right, because identity our identity starts to become these external definitions or things. So our jobs are a prime example, probably not just lawyers. I mean, even me is like I built a successful career in like healthcare administration, spent a lot of money going to school, got all these like certifications and letters after my name.
Which do you think is not your identity, or it is your identity?
At the time, I really thought it was my identity. That's how I introduced.
You were born to do this.
Yeah. Well, it was like how I introduced myself. Kind of.
He was in healthcare, like software.
Yeah. So I met him while I was in grad school. So yes, as I was pursuing some letters to go after my name, he was. Are you familiar with Shark Tank? Of course you are, right?
No, what is that?
Okay. Hey, some people don't know. So Shark Tank, I was in an entrepreneurship class, and basically the teacher had set up professor had set up the class as a Shark Tank. We were preparing to go on Shark Tank, and Michael was a shark. And so
that's fun.
Yeah, it was actually really cool. There were like 4 sharks, and we had to present to the sharks, and whichever team got the investment of $1 million.
The mean one, like Kevin O'Leary, or
no, but he definitely asked as typical Michael, right? He's asking very thought-provoking questions and like trying to figure out, just as he always does. Like, he's not trying to prove you wrong. He's not trying to make you look bad, but he is going to ask you like questions where you're like, really? Yeah. Like, it's 9:00 at night, brother. Like, get me out of here. I don't want to be here. Stop asking me, are you going to give me the $1 million or not? Like, no. Like, anyway, so that's how we met initially. And I honestly like paid no mind to him. Like, like I said, I had worked all day. I was going to class at night. The last thing I was worried about was meeting a man. And so
your future husband,
my future husband. And so I connected with all of the sharks all the people on LinkedIn. Cause again, that's something you're supposed to do. Right. And I can't remember if I sent a note or not. And then he reached back out, I'm pretty sure. And because we both worked in healthcare, I was in the hospital side and he was in the healthcare SaaS side. And what I did and what he did were, my perspective would have been valuable to him and his company. He was like, hey, would you come by the office and meet with me and my team? I want to ask you some questions. And so I remember I did. And I like had on this is like a side note, but I had on the ugliest pantsuit, because that's all I wore were like pantsuits. The ugliest pantsuit I own. And I go to his office, ponytail. I'm pretty sure my makeup was coming off because I'd gotten to the hospital at like 6 a.m. It's now 6 p.m. I'm exhausted. I'm like, I have to go talk to this company. Why did I decide to do this? Yeah. And then the door opens to the elevator, or the elevator opens in his office, and he's like standing right. Like as soon as it opens, it's kind of like a movie moment. Elevator opens and he's like right there. And then I remember thinking, oh, well, he's a little bit cuter than I remember. And I looked down at my pantsuit and I'm like, shit. Okay. Guess we're here now. Let's just wing it. And the rest is kind of history. It took us like it was like 9 or 10 months before he asked me out on a date though. So.
Oh, really?
Yeah. So it was like a little long.
So were you guys like were you guys still like just talking, or like and relationship, or
he like we talked a little bit, and then he was going through I'm going to plug the book. He was going through The Tale of Two Divorces, which is the last chapter in his book. Little did I know he had all this turmoil going on in his life. Where
that's why it took a while.
Yeah. So he had, he shared with me that he was divorcing his wife and that they were in the middle of that whole process. And I didn't know what was going on with his company, and that he was in the process of, divorcing his business partner as well. And
another story.
Yes.
We'll get into it on another episode.
Yeah, it is a great chapter. If you do nothing else, but you buy the book to read that.
Do you think it's like kind of your authenticity that attracted him to, that he was attracted to?
I think so, because I remember being like, this dude is such a douchebag, because I didn't fully understand like why he wasn't asking me out. I'm like, he really is. We were emailing, and it had gotten to the point where it was definitely like flirting. And he asked me in the email, this was like, maybe a week after I'd been to his office. He said, what are we doing? What are we doing here? And I was like, I'm flirting. I don't know what you're doing.
That's probably what did it. And
he said that really like caught him off guard. And then I remember it kind of fizzled out, and I had really like moved on and didn't really care anymore, because I was like, this dude, he can't make up his mind. So several months later, like he sent me an email and he was like, hey, I just wanted to check in. Did you graduate? And I don't even think I said anything other than, are you going to ask me out or what? That's all my like email like said back. Cause I was like, I'm not doing this like, oh, how are you? Like, great. Yeah.
But usually that doesn't work on most people. Like it might work on Michael, because he's like all about just being upfront and authentic. But I feel like that kind of kills. Yeah. I feel like, so I mean that's kind of interesting, because like, yes, we should be authentic and all of that, but I don't know if that works in like building chemistry or like in the dating world.
No, I mean, I wouldn't have been upset if it didn't, because I was like, if this dude isn't like, is he gonna ask me out or what?
But it's too like robotic, no? Like it's
true.
Kind of.
But I think that's part of my like personality is, and whether so if it had been someone that didn't appreciate that, didn't want to keep talking.
You know what it is? Like, I think maybe it is good, because I think in a romantic relationship, right? Because I think there's a difference between a relationship and attraction. And like one of my other
Yes.
clients talks about this, and you don't necessarily want a partner who you're just like who you're just attracted to, because it's more like a marriage is more like a life partnership. Like you're gonna go through a lot of shit. Like when I think of Gigi, I don't think of it as like this like fire love. Like I'm so attracted to her. Like I mean I am, but like I don't think of it like that. Like I think of it as like this kind of companionship that we have. Like she's like literally like my partner in life.
Yes.
And you know, there's gonna be some ugly shit there that we have to go through. But because we know each other so well, almost like a business partnership, like we can get through them. And that's why I think it was good, because like my relationship happened very similar to yours, where like what I was so attracted to about Gigi is that she's so like she's almost too authentic to a fault, to a point where
she's so awesome.
like, she says a lot of politically incorrect shit, and sometimes like I'm like sometimes like I'm afraid that like in front of clients like if we offended them or something like that, right? Like for example, I had a friend over who was like sleeping over at my place, and she was just showing some pictures, and then like some yoga teachers, and then he's like, oh yeah, you know her, blah, 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 right? And then he asked like which one, because there was 2 girls in the picture, and she goes, the pretty one.
Love you,
so
Gigi.
that's something like, you know, that's something that people would not say, especially in front of somebody they just met, right? Like
but Gigi
like,
did.
Yeah. And that's what I found so attractive. Like the first date that we went on, I was like, where should we go? And she's like, oh, let's go to McDonald's.
That is awesome.
Like, I just like fell in love with her right away, right? So, but it wasn't like the kind of attraction type of, that's what I mean by like, I think a lot of us like meet the wrong person and marry the wrong person because we just go by who we're attracted to. And
yeah.
So maybe the authenticity does work in relationship. It just doesn't work if you're trying to date and just, you know, like madly fall in love with somebody but do you necessarily want that in a life partner? Right?
Right.
You don't want that up and down, like, you know, drama.
Yeah. Well, because there's such what you said about like, there's this level of deep connection that can't happen with just attraction.
Yeah.
Like, because like you said, you go through some real shit.
Yeah.
Especially like, I think you and I can relate to like when you work with your significant other, you live with them, you spend
24/7 with them.
Yeah. Like you're going to go through hard stuff. And if you don't have the muscles required to have those hard conversations and to work through that stuff, then attraction won't get you through that. But like real connection will.
Yeah. Because attraction has a little bit to do with mystery, right? Like not knowing what the other person feels or like something like that. But you can't have that in a marriage, right? Like you can't, like there has to be constant open communication. And, you know, so.
Yeah. Marriage is hard.
So that's probably kind of how like why it works between you and Michael too. Yeah.
I think we both are willing to like admit when we've been wrong, to see the other person's point of view. And that doesn't mean that we always agree all the time. Like and we're not afraid, and it takes time to do this. And I remember Michael said something early in our relationship and I say something about the first 6 months of our relationship was probably the hardest because he had just gone through a divorce and he wasn't going to just jump into a relationship and like not get through the things, like not work past the hard conversations and bring up things that bothered him or questions that he had or he wasn't going to avoid difficult conversations, A, because he's naturally gifted at that, but B, because he had just
He's not naturally gifted
gone
at
through.
it. His work through it. He's worked
That's
at
true.
it.
That's true. That is true. He's worked at it for such a long time. He's got like such muscle memory around that. That ability to have those difficult conversations. And then I had no interest in being married. I had no interest in like being in a relationship. I had no interest in having children. So like, I felt like I had nothing to lose. Like it was worth having the difficult conversations. It was worth bringing up things I didn't like. And so I always say like the first 6 months was the hardest. And the thing that he says.
So you did all the things that people do later in the relationship up front. We did all the not fun stuff.
Yeah. And the way and I would even tell Michael, I'm like, you know what? We're broken. This isn't going to work. Like we don't see eye to eye. We're different here. And he'd be like, no, like we are working through the things like what you just said, the things that most people never address. And then their relationship blows up, or B, they don't try and work through it until the resentment has built up. It's far too late to like try and do something about it, or they just try to do it later. But I think I used
to be like that, like how you were saying, like I give up way too easy, or it's something that I've constantly, like ever since I've been running my own business, I've worked at it. But I'm very cynical, so I'm very like naturally pessimistic. So whenever something like one thing goes wrong, I'm like, oh, that's not gonna work, right? Like, and that's kind of what you were saying, right? Oh, this relationship's not gonna work, or whatever.
I'm like, I'm done. Like that. That's my natural instinct.
But that's like the worst thing you can do in business.
Yes. And Michael has taught me that over and over. He's like, in so many ways, in a relationship, in big life too, decisions. Just in life, but definitely in business. I've learned, because I'm like, it doesn't work. We got to pivot. We can't do this anymore. And he's no, there might be something to learn from it, but doesn't mean it's not going to work.
Are you like very, I have a very black and white personality, like all or nothing kind of personality. That's another reason why I'm like that. I'm like, oh, this is not going to work. Right. Like soon as like one glitch comes up, so I'm like, oh, this is pointless. But
I don't think I'm black and white though.
Okay. So I'm probably a lot worse than you then.
You probably are. It depends on me too, what things I'm like, no, this isn't going to work. It's because it's not everything that it's anything that I have fear around. I don't know the right word to put on it. Like I start to have fear around my security. So the business,
like your personal security,
my personal security is like a human. So my relationship, I have this like fight or flight feeling. That's like, your fear. Oh, it's not working. So you know what that means? I need to retreat because this isn't going well.
What do you think? Where do you think that comes from?
Gosh, son, that's a very interesting question. Part of it, and this could be wrong, but I think part of it is that I grew up with a family that I have such a sense of security with, and such a sense of belonging. And I know no matter what, everything else in my world could fall apart. And without a doubt, I could go back. I could go back to that bubble. So it makes it really easy when the relationship isn't working, the business isn't working, something isn't working, to be like, fuck this. I've got some people that care. I got something
better at home.
I'm out of here. Like, because even early in my and Michael's relationship, like there would be times where I'm like, you know what? I'm out of here. I'm leaving. I never actually did with my previous relationships. I definitely, we call it like, I pulled the parachute. I'd be like, I'm out of here. The light switch effect. I just be like, I'm done.
You don't let it get too bad. Like
no, like this isn't worth it. Let's part ways. Cause I've got something better back here. I've got something that does work back here. So I've always felt that security net underneath me, that it felt comfortable.
I think that's like, that's so dangerous though. Like for people that, cause like I know some people like in Korea that are like that, where whenever something happens, like whenever they get into a fight with their husband or wife, or they just go home, right? They just go home to their parents, right? Like, and once you start doing that once, like you're going to keep doing, it's like, then you're like not learning how to fight through something.
Yes.
You don't build up the resistance to work through something. Yeah.
You're exactly right. And thankfully I have never, Michael is so amazing. I have felt the desire to do it, but I've never done it. And I think the only reason why is because I have a partner that I know will work through it with me. He doesn't.
Michael, I feel, is like your new
family.
It's like,
yes.
Yeah.
Like
so he's the one you fall back on now. Like if,
and he will embrace, like he knows, if, you know, it's been maybe a handful of times that's happened, but like in those few times, he doesn't try to fight that.
Oh, you get worried?
He doesn't know. He doesn't try to fight it. He like, he sees it and he's able to help us work through it. Does that make sense? So instead of like, I think most partners I've had in the past fight against it or completely cower down against it versus trying to work through it, like seeing this in their partner, knowing that this is what happens and like let's work through it together.
I see what you mean. Yeah.
It becomes like
I used to have like cause I can kind of sense when somebody's like me, right? Cause like the way I am is, I've always been, my entire life, I've learned to be self-sufficient, right? Like, so when I started designing and I didn't know how to code certain things, like instead of like relying on a developer, I would just learn how to code and do it. So I don't have to. So the reason why I was able to build so much skills in my life, like so many different skills, like whether it's design, coding, copywriting, sales, all of these skills that I've built, it's because I didn't want to depend on anyone. Like worst case scenario, I wanted to be able to know how to do it myself, right? That it got to a point where like I didn't depend on, like earlier in my business, I didn't depend on my clients. So like if client gets like really annoying or something like that, I'll be like, oh, fuck this. And I'll, you know what I mean? Like, cause it's like, so I was a very not dependent person. Like, because I was trying to not depend on them, I made it so that like, I'm not dependent. Do you understand what I mean? Because I feel like I can leave whenever I want. Yeah. So, but I saw how that was like not good for the business. That like a lot of times in life and business, you just gotta stick through. Like no matter how fucking shitty it is, or you know how annoying a client is, or whatever, how hard it is, you have to stick it through. And then like what's on the other side of that is where like magic happens. Do you know what I mean?
Yes.
So yeah.
Well, Michael talks about, I don't know if he's ever said this to you, like you've got to buy the lesson. So like if you're halfway through it, just see it all the way through. Cause if you're going to pay for the lesson, just buy the whole lesson. Cause there's a lot to learn on the other side. So versus
and you can't, that's why I always think of it like that. Like people can't teach you shit. Like you can learn stuff from others, but they can't teach you, because like in order for like like that's kind of one of the things I realized. Like, there's no point for me to teach somebody who doesn't want to learn, right? Like, so that's what I mean. Like, if I'm an employee or somebody want to learn, I'm all there. I have all the resources. I'm going to give them all the knowledge and everything that I need to teach them. But if that person doesn't want to learn, there's no point teaching them, because things can't be taught. They have to be learned. And that's what I think what he means, that like when it's learned, you have to pay the price to learn that. Right?
Yes.
You can't just like do it for free. Somebody can't just give you the information and like, oh, now I got it.
Now I got it.
You know what I mean?
You know what? I've never thought about it like that. You have to.
You got to learn the hard way.
You have to learn. And if you don't, it's other like like you can memorize something. Mm-hmm. But if you don't actually.
Yeah, no, that means if you memorize something, you didn't. I want to talk about this is something I learned from one of my friends who's like worked. He worked in Macmillan, which is like a textbook publishing company.
Yeah.
And he was like a IT director there. So he understands like how they break down textbooks and how they they create taxonomy out of it in order to like organize all the knowledge and stuff like that. But one thing that he told me that blew my mind is I think it's called pedagogy, which is like that's like the study of learning, like how learning works and how educational system works. And if you look at like all of humanity, like everything that we have now, right? Like this camera, all this technology we have, everything that, or even our society, political systems, whatever it is that we have, it all is based on this one idea, which is like in the beginning, let's say caveman days, they have to learn how to like make weapons and all of that. And then they had to like hand it down. They have to teach that to someone next, and then generation improves that. And then it got to where we are now, right? Mm-hmm. And this entire system of how that works is called pedagogy or pedagogy or something like that. And there's like 8 different steps to it. And I don't know like all the steps. I forgot all that shit. But the thing that I remember is...
You didn't learn it.
No, I didn't learn it properly. That's why I'm not a professor or I'm not in education. But step 1 is memorizing, right? And this is where like, that's what school is. When you go to school, you're memorizing, you're reading textbook, they're forcing you to memorize, and that can be taught. Like they can force you to do that, right? Mm-hmm. And then step 2 is comprehension. Like, so now you have all this. Step 1 is just information, right? But it doesn't mean anything to you. But once you're able to like put it together and you actually understand it, and then after that, you find a way to improve it. You take that thing that you comprehended and you try different shit to try to improve it. And then you take that and you try to teach it to somebody else, and then so on. It's like, so it has to go through these 8 steps for us to evolve as humans, right? But like he says something like about 80% of us stop after step 1, memorizing. And that's where everybody leaves. Like most people, like only 20% of people that talks about shit actually fully understand it. Mm-hmm. And then like the other 20% like actually understands what the fuck they're talking about. So, and I can see it everywhere, right? Like I can see like, especially like on Instagram and like on YouTube now, when everybody's talking about like, you know, if I talk about something about like, oh, you know, you have to be consistent and blah, blah, blah. And everyone's heard that shit. Like they heard, yeah, you have to be consistent, blah, blah, blah. So they repeat it over and over and over, but they don't know, like in their bones, they don't know what that really means. Right? Because they haven't. Yeah. And the way to get to that second step is by experiencing it with your pain, like suffering. That's how you get it in your bones.
Yes. You know what I mean? Yes. That, you know what it reminds me of? Like, I remember being in, there's a little newborn over here. If you hear like a little baby, I remember being like working, I'm not clinical, but I remember working in a hospital, and the doctors would talk about, because I worked in an academic medical center,
Mhm.
They would say learn one, do one, teach one.
Mm-mm-mm.
So you learn how it's done, you do it to get that hands-on experience, and then if you're able to teach it to someone else, then
Yeah. Yeah,
you've mastered it, because
I agree.
I think you're right. If you can teach someone how to do something, that is when you know that you fully comprehend it
You understand.
and
Yeah.
you completely understand it, and you can break it down. Actually, it's if you can teach someone in like a kindergartner could understand it. Because then because you can, if you're able to take something super complex and like make it
Mhm.
very simple, then I think you totally understand it. I don't know if that sounds counterintuitive or
No,
not, but
I know what you mean. Like when you like something as simple as tying a shoe, right? Like
yes,
if I were to try to teach you how to tie a shoe without you doing it, like it's impossible for me to like verbally try to teach you. Like I can teach you all until you start doing it, you're not going to really get it, right? But once you get it and you start doing it, yes, you know it because you know it in the motion, and you know you understand like how to, and you can keep doing it. But if I were to say, oh, now teach that to somebody else just using words, like it's gonna, like without demonstrating it, then you're not going to be able to do it again, because in order to do that, you really have to understand it. You have to understand how to like vocalize it, how, like where most people make mistakes, right? Because if you teach something to different people, depending on their personality or something, is the baby okay?
Yeah, he's waking up.
Oh,
He's like, hey, I'm here. Let's see. Hello.
oh my god.
Hello.
Oh my god.
He's like, I'm hungry, Mom. I know. This is Wolfie. Wolf. I call him
Say
Wolfie.
hi to the world,
short.
Wolfie.
Yeah. Hey,
That's what I would call him.
Because he's like, he's so little. So I'm like, Wolfie. It's like, what? You're on your first podcast, buddy. And you're only like 12 days old.
This is the youngest podcaster guest in the history of podcast.
Yeah. How do you feel about that? But I think you're right. Like it I don't know. I think it resonates with me because I'm thinking about all the people that are out there like teaching right now, and they're really just
repeating.
Yeah. They're just repeating. And then I think about someone like Michael, who has spent so much time researching, reading others' research, living, and now teaching people a system that has taken him almost 2 decades to.
That's why I think like education is going to change, because
it already is, right?
Yeah. Yeah, I mean, it hasn't changed yet because it's such the current education system with the bachelor and the masters and doctoral, like that's like a 500-year-old system, right? It started in like Oxford like 500 years ago, and there's such like a bureaucracy there that it's not going to easily change. But what I see happening is, like, every time I go to a university and talk to a university professor or something like that talked about marketing or design, they're so behind, they don't know shit. Like and the reason why is because people that become teachers, people that become like marketing professors, is because they didn't have a successful career in marketing. Like, and this is what I realized in film school, right? Like all the teachers at my film school were like failed filmmakers. Like they couldn't make it in Hollywood, so now they're teaching film. Do you know what I mean?
Oh my God, right. Like Steven Spielberg isn't teaching.
Yeah, exactly, right.
Down the street at
I mean, maybe he is like doing like guest lectures or whatever. but they're not
they're not teaching.
Yeah, and it's the same in marketing. Like if you're fucking good in marketing and you're like a successful marketer, you're doing shit for like a large company. You're a consultant like flying all over the world doing this. You're not teaching at NYU.
I don't know why, like, I don't know why that seems so profound to me, but like, I've never thought about it like that. Like the people that are teaching are usually like the losers.
I make people say, "Oh, I never thought about it that way."
I know.
That's my thing.
That's if you taught a class, that would be the title of your class. Like, I never thought about it like that.
I'm thinking about making that my tagline.
You should, because that is, I mean, I can't, you always make me stop and like think like, oh, that's interesting. I've never thought about it like that.
There's no other word for it, right?
Oh, it's like you have these like.
But that's why I think education is changing, because it's a system built around that. So that's why every marketing professor, every like programming professor, like they don't actually know how to code. Like they don't know the latest technology. They're not in it, right? Like they're not in the front like battle like field, like tackling this on a daily basis. And I think people like Michael, people like that are actually doing it, that are teaching online through YouTube and things like that. I think that's the future of education. Because
have you seen these like masterclass?
Yeah.
Isn't that
masterclass.com? Yeah.
Yeah, where they have like Steph Curry and like Gordon Ramsay.
Those are the best. Yeah.
Those are the people I want to learn from.
Yeah. Have you taken one?
No, but I really want to. Yeah. Like Gordon Ramsay was the first one that I saw, and I like I watched his scrambled eggs one because I think they were doing like watch one of them kind of things, but it makes me think of those because those are the people. I think it's such a great concept. Like if I'm going to learn anything, if I want to learn how to 3-point shoot, I think I should probably learn from Steph Curry.
Yeah, I saw I actually took the one with Steph Curry. It's like
you did.
That's the thing. Yeah, that's the thing I love about masterclass is when you do that, because we have a preconceived notion of how basketball is and what we think we know it, right? Like or filmmaking, we think we know it, or acting. When Natalie Portman does the acting one, we think we know it. But when these guys do it, when you take a masterclass, they go so detailed into it to a point where like it's so complex. Actually, the down to a little like how thoughtful it is that it like just blows your mind. Like how like the physics he understands, like how he has to like move a certain way, which is going to trigger the other person to do this, and like just the details of it.
It's the nuance. They know the nuance.
The nuance. Yeah, that regular teachers don't. That are just repeating shit.
And I think that's one of your things. You know the nuance.
Like, when it comes to my stuff, yeah.
When it comes to your stuff, right? Not basketball, unless you like got something that I had no idea, and I've learned something new about Sun today.
I'm athletically challenged.
Okay. But I like Michael, he has that like this nuanced approach to both entrepreneurship and how he led his company and how he approaches sales, to how he lives his life and wants others to live their lives. And then for you, like experiencing you and how you see brands, you know the nuance. You need a master class. How do we do this?
I should. Like when I talk about like when I talk about with clients, how like when I show them websites and I talk like it can be a simple thing like how on Mel Robbins' website, like we went from black background, which is where we put all the problems, and then we turn into white. Like that kind of little nuanced decisions, like most web designers don't put in that much thought into into making a website, like, or using this word versus this word, and removing this word that's going to do something different than using this word.
Right.
And like, you know, having it in like 2 lines versus 1 line, like all those little nuances actually make a difference.
Dude, you're so right, because I mean, you've done that on multiple occasions. On like, I remember like saying, you'd be like, okay, I'm going to take this bar out, or I'm going to do this or this. That seemed so small. And I'm like, no, man, it doesn't matter.
Yeah.
And then you do it. And I'm like, removing this one little scroll bar so there's not 2 scroll bars.
Oh, yeah, I know what you mean. Yeah.
I was like, wow, that actually.
Because I think most things, like human interaction, like the human brain is so complex that I think, you know, when we meet somebody, we talk to them, we get this like instinctive feel, right? Like that we can trust this person or we can't trust it. But if you think of like, there's actually a logical reason behind it, of like maybe their facial expression, what they're wearing, like every tiny little details that make it that way. It's just that most people don't know it, right? And on the website, it's the same thing. When I come to a website, there's a reason why like this website seems like to the naked eye, like most people can't compare the websites that I've done with some, like, let's say a junior website. Like they can't really tell the difference, right? On the naked eye. But you put it out there and it's performing, like one's going to perform way better than the other. And it's those little nuances that makes it like that makes it like, when somebody sees it, they don't know, they can't quite explain why, but I trust this brand more. I don't know. It makes me want to buy it more. Like,
right. So why do you think you got good at that?
I think it's,
why do you think you're good at that?
I think it's because like I've just been doing it for a long time. I don't think like people ask me that, like people ask me, oh, can you teach me storytelling? And I'm like, I really can't, because I don't know how to. Like I don't have like a methodology that I follow. Like I don't have the 3 principles of storytelling. Like it's just something that, and every story that I tell is slightly different. And it's, I mean, actually, like now I'm trying to, like that whole pedagogy example that I give you. Now I'm trying to break down what I do. I'm trying to study what I do and try to figure out how I do it, to see if there's like a methodology behind it.
There has to be. Yeah. There has to be,
I'm
right?
sure, yeah.
Like,
that's when I really mastered it. Because that's the teach part, right? Like I got the learning part, I got the information, I got the doing part. Now I have to learn how to teach it.
Yeah, it's like you need your 3 principles, your system, because there has to be something similar between.
Yeah, and I'm starting to see a pattern. Like every carousel that I've done and every web copy that I've done, there's always a turning point. Meaning, and I noticed that when I studied screenwriting too, right? Like Seth Rogen talks about this. There's a difference between a plot and a story. And the difference is like, one is like when people watch a movie, they go in thinking that it's about this, but it actually turns out to be about this. And a good example is like when you watch Superbad, you think that it's about 2 high school kids trying to lose their virginity, but by the end of the movie, you realize that it's actually about their friendship and that they're going away to college. And so there's a deeper level of like, and they're like trying to deal with that, you know, like, or if you look at 40-Year-Old Virgin, you think it's about this 40-year-old virgin who's trying to lose this virginity, you know, but at the end, it's really like about him overcoming his own fear. And, you know, like there's always like and that's the difference between a plot and a story. And the best movies, like people go in thinking it's this, but by the end, it actually, the thing that you think is the most important actually happens to be the least important. And the thing that you think is the least important actually happens to be the most important. And I noticed that, like, if I go back in all my Instagram carousel, they all are like that. Like the one that says like, hey, like a beautiful grid is so important in personal branding. And then I show examples of like all the ugly ass grids, right? So you think, you think you're going to go in like thinking this is what I'm going to talk about, but it actually turns out. So there's always a turning point that goes like, holy shit, I didn't expect that. Right.
Yeah.
And that's the turning point. So I noticed that there's like the one commonality throughout all my posts. So that's why I know that that's one. Like another one is that I always start with the problem or pain. Like that, you know, like, so there, I'm sure if I break it down even more, there's probably some sort of a methodology there that I don't know yet.
Yeah.
Once I figure it out, I'm going to make a masterclass called How to Tell a Story in Carousels.
How to tell a story. Donald Miller, you got nothing on Sun, man.
No, like I really think that, because like, you know, I studied like Hero's Journey and Donald Miller's like story brand for a long time. And like when I first heard about, I mean, because like Donald Miller's story brand is one of the first books that I've read on in this type of story, like sales copy storytelling. And it blew my mind. Yeah. But the more I actually used it, the more I implemented it in real life, I started understanding the nuance, and that I started understanding that you can't follow that method every time. It sounds good when you try to sell a course, but in practical use, there's a lot of parts of it that doesn't work. And like, I see a lot of people do this right now in the carousel community, like they repeat what down, like, oh, you are the hero, like your customer is the hero, all that bullshit. But like, okay, guy, try to tell that 7-step story in the carousel. I bet you can't do it, because it's like you're just not going to be able to do it. Yeah, it's too much. And then you get lost in it, or at least I do. And then I'm like, well, am I following the hero's journey here? Like, yeah. There has to be more high level, simplified concepts that you learn, and then everything else could be flexible. Yep. I agree. Like, it's like, what up to the baby? 3. Oh, he's down here chilling. So cool. He's just chilling. It's such a good baby. He is very good. He's not making a lot of noise. He's very different than our firstborn. I think it's because I'm less anxious. Like, I'm so less anxious. Like right now, I'm pretty chill about this whole thing, right? Like, but if this had been our daughter, I would have been like, son, all right, I gotta go. Do you think it's because it's like you've already experienced, like now you're like a veteran? Yes. And I think I've got some friends that are just chill in general. Like some of our best friends that live in California, they are just like chill people in general. Michael and I are not chill. We are both uptight, type A, plan kind of people. And so anxious, like we have anxiety. So I think with our firstborn, like you don't know what's going on. You don't know what to do. Am I doing this right? Are they going to survive? And then with him, I'm like, I've done this. Like you said, like I've done this. I've seen this. I know what to expect. He's not the same, and there are things that are different, but you just feel like, I feel like you can get through it. Like I can get through it. And I have like I've already like conquered this before. Is it like a confidence thing? Like, no. Yeah, I think some of it's confidence. Cause we finally gave him his like first bath last night. And I remember with my daughter, I was in like, my mom had to help me because I was so scared to like put her in the tub. And then I was like crying. And she could probably feel your energy, and that makes it worse. Yeah. And so she's like, yeah, of course. And so she's kind of freaking out. I'm freaking out. I'm like, I'm in tears with my mom. Like, I can't do this. I can't do this. And last night with him, we have our toddler who's like attempting to try and give him a bath. And like, I'm trying to put him in the tub. Amaret was trying to give her. That's awesome. Oh, I mean, it's like, so don't drown your brother. Like, hang on. And so it was such chaos. Like Michael actually videoed it because it was just like the most chaotic. I was going to say, I hope you have a video of it. It was just a chaotic experience last night. And so with him, I was just like, okay, I'm putting you in the tub for a second. I was just so much more chill about the whole thing. Yeah.
Um,
And like, it's so funny that you can sense that, because like, that's how I feel, right? Like now when I walk into a sales meeting or something like that,
yeah.
in the beginning, like I'm trying to go in there with this, like trying to impress. I'm like, I have to do good, blah, blah, blah. But now I don't even prepare for sales. Like before I would do my research the company, blah, blah, blah. Like now I don't even play. Like I'm like, I go in, I'm like, they'll be like, oh yeah, so have you checked out our website? I'm like, no. Like, should I?
I love that. And then you ask them very thoughtful questions, because if they know anything, like once you start asking the questions, like it makes it very clear
it
that
actually, it shows that I care.
Yeah, you're not aloof. It's not that you're just like, you know,
but I think that's,
and
for me, from the client's perspective, like,
yeah,
if I talk to a developer, if I go to a car mechanic and the mechanic's like just so chill, like that actually makes me more confident that, oh, this guy is like an OG, like,
yeah,
you know what I mean?
yeah. So, okay, it's so really funny you say that, because when we were trying to pick out pediatricians way like a couple of years ago, we went on like a few interviews, and the first guy was like straight out of med school. I think he had been out of med school for like, or out of his residency, and was like practicing for maybe like 2 years. So he was
he
like,
just started his own practice.
He had just started his practice. Yeah. And he was very new, very green. And so he like had all of these like very textbook answers, and like wanted you to like, you know, he just had a very textbook.
He thought by giving you all of this information, it's going to make you feel more calm. Like it's going to make you feel more safe. Yeah,
exactly. And then we went to who is now our pediatrician, who I absolutely
so
adore.
obviously you didn't go with that guy.
We didn't go with him because the pediatrician that we chose, he was like, all right, guys, here are all the questions I know you have. Here's how I do things. This is just how it works.
You'll be all right. Everything's going to be fine.
Yep. Like, this is how the practice works. He had like a list of things. Like, I know you want to ask me about this, and this. Here's how it is. And it was just so much. He was
That's what I mean. Those
calm,
are
so confident.
Those are the nuances. Yeah. And it's not, I mean, he got there because he's been doing it for years, right? But those are the nuances. For some reason, our human brain can tell, like, oh, this guy knows his shit versus this guy is like kind of a newbie, or like, you know what I mean?
Yeah. Because I was like, he seems like he it was a completely different vibe. And so Michael and I both were like, hands down, we're going with the other guy.
Yeah.
Not that the kid did, he wasn't a kid, but not that the newer, more green doctor didn't know what he was talking about. Yeah, he's probably older than me. Like, not that he didn't know what he was doing. It was just our pediatrician that we went with. It's like I had there was like no doubt
like
in my mind.
Feeling. Yeah.
Totally. Like, this guy knows what he's doing, and I totally trust.
I see young, like, because I see young freelancers, like my employees, when they go start their own agencies and stuff, like I see them doing it all the time, thinking like this, like, information overload is going to make them feel safe. But it's actually quite the opposite. Like, when you act like you don't care and you're like, hey, you're going to be fine. Oh, don't worry about that. Like, that's actually what's going to make them feel more calm and more confident in you.
Yes. Yes. And there is, and I do think that there is a distinction and like a fine line between like someone who just
don't care,
who doesn't. Someone who's just like, I'm trying to, there's like some kind of car commercial or like insurance commercial. I don't lately, like or maybe it's AT&T, where it's like the tattoo artist who's like, yeah, I've only been doing this for days or something.
Like, you could clearly tell that he doesn't care versus like he cares, but he's not worried.
Yeah.
There's a difference.
Right. He cares about the right things.
Yeah.
Versus just doesn't care.
I guess you just can't learn that overnight. It just comes with
No, just like you said, it came with experience.
Yeah.
And you like built your confidence.
Yeah.
And you're very like confident in your approach.
Yeah.
And
that confidence is
everyone's not gonna like some people may not be comfortable with that. Like some people may be much more comfortable with the information overload. But
I see what you mean. Yeah.
Like,
I don't think so though. From my experience, I don't think so. Like you should be able to, if somebody asks you a specific question, you should have that answer, or you should know how to get that answer. But to make them feel safe that okay, it's covered.
Yeah.
But just giving like overload info, because I see a lot of teachers do that too. Like a lot of teachers, like they over explain everything. Like that's how you know that they're a bad teacher. Because now the students starts getting overwhelmed, and like when I teach, what I do is I try to, when a new employee starts and I start like like an intern or something like that, and I know that I'm starting fresh from new, like I know that there's this much that needs to be learned for him, right? But I'll just give him this one information first on that first week or something, right? To make sure he 100% understood that concept first. Because if he didn't 100% understand that, then getting to here, like the more you go, the more confused he's going to get.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So I make sure that he gets that concept clear and it's like in his bones before I move on to the next step and so on.
Yeah.
Which is so important, I think.
Yeah, you have to have the foundation to build on.
But a lot of people that they try to just give him everything at once, like, whoa.
Fire hose. Like, and you know what? Like Michael does that sometimes, but I think it's because he's so far ahead. He forgets how much he knows. I'm always telling him this. I'm like, you forget that you're like,
you mean like when it comes to
advanced
like
expert
stuff he's doing now or for business?
Both.
Oh,
I think
really?
he always has like the capacity. So it's two areas that he's like superbly an expert in. He forgets that not everyone operates like at that. No one is that far down the path. The curse of
knowledge. Yeah.
Yes. They're not as far down the path. And so when he starts talking in advanced ideas and concepts, it actually creates more complexity.
But who is he talking to? Because it depends on the audience too, right?
Even people who are like joining the mask-free program, right? Like most of them are just trying to learn the basics.
That's true.
And the way that he lives it is like, he won't like.
I guess you know what it is.
Scientology, but he's gone clear.
Yeah, he's gone clear. He's gone clear. Come back, Michael. Come back.
He'll kill me for saying that, but in his like in his
I know what you
stuff,
mean. Yeah,
he's gone
and
clear.
And I'm sure there are some people that like. If I listen to like Russell Brand, right? I feel like he's one of those people where most of that shit that he's talking about in his podcast is so like complex that most people don't get it. But I'm sure there are people that are fully with him on the same page, right? Like, oh, this guy's brilliant, right? So I think the reason, because I'm like that too. I used to like have conversation with friends or whatever, and then like 15 minutes into it, they're like, what? Like, what the hell are you talking about, right? Yeah. So, but I think the reason, the way I fixed it is because of my job, right? Because I do marketing. And I noticed that, like, I literally have to assume that everyone that's reading my message is a moron. Like, and I have to speak that way. I have to write that way. I have to. And it's not because they're actually morons. It's like humans as individuals are genius. They're smart.
Yes. But no, I know what
people as a group are morons. And the reason why is because when somebody's reading your website, somebody's reading like something or like watching a YouTube video, like only about 10% of their attention is actually there, right?
Yeah.
90% of their attention is like, oh, what am I going to eat tonight? Oh, like, oh, I got to do this. So when somebody's only using 10% of their brain power, how can I still get the message through, right? That because I'm constantly thinking about that, I just treat them as morons. Do you know what I mean?
Yes. Yeah. You communicate your message as if you were talking with a moron.
Yeah. Like,
or to a moron. Yeah.
And I get into like arguments with clients because of it, because clients will say, oh, like that sounds so childish, or that sounds, I'm like, yeah, we have to pretend like we're speaking to a child.
Yeah. Well, and we've had that conversation before, I think, like when we've been building stuff like emails and
that was not nearly as bad as some, because some clients like really like take what they say, like some people I feel like really put themselves in a pedestal where like, oh, like my voice has to come off this way, or like otherwise people are not going to respect me or whatever, right? Like I'm like, okay, first they have to understand it.
Yeah.
Like people are not paying $30 to voluntarily buy your book, to invest 40 hours to read it, right? Like they stumbled upon your website and we're now forcing them to read it. They're not going to put in the work.
Right. Exactly. If you make it hard, and I really like what Donald Miller says about this, like running on a treadmill. You know, he has that analogy where he's like
every step you take is work. Yeah. Every word is
and work. Like he talks about like just like the energy that it's going to take someone to understand what you're saying. Like exactly. You're increasing the speed on the treadmill, and like they're not going to be able to hang on, and they'll just stop. Either they'll stop running, stop reading, or fall off. And
but there's the thing, right? Like, maybe we can wrap it up on this, but before what we were talking about, like knowing something versus really understanding it and feeling it. Like a lot of people know that. Like when I say, oh, you have to simplify your message, you have to talk as if you're talking to a 6-year-old. Everybody knows that. They've heard that somewhere. And even on Instagram, I see people talking about it all the time, right? You have to simplify. But then when I actually go there, 99% of people are not doing it. So why? It's because you know it in the back of your head, but you don't really feel it in your heart. Because the reason, and I knew it and I didn't do it in the beginning, but the reason why I feel it now, and I like the price that I pay to learn it is that for 10 years, I've been putting out these convoluted messages out there and saw that nobody's reacting to it. And then on the next website, we'll do it again. And again, like bounce rate's so high, like there's no traffic. And I do it again and again and again. And after doing it so many times, now I feel it in my heart that if I do that, nobody's going to read it.
Yeah. What you've worked that muscle.
Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
It didn't happen. Yeah. I think that's a huge message, is that for anyone who is writing copy or building a website or whatever they're doing, you have to keep practicing it. Like, it's not like, here's the formula that someone on YouTube or that son told you, or that anyone fucking told you. Like, you're just going to have to use their guidance, use their experience, use what they're saying to refine and master your craft. But you have to do it, like, and fail at it.
You have to see with your own, you have to put it out, look at Google Analytics and see that everybody's leaving in the first 2 seconds.
Yep.
And then tweak it, do it again.
And then tweak it and test the variables and see what happens. That, I think that's a part, like when we, one of the pacify.
Oh, it's a giraffe.
It's a giraffe. But that is like one of the things, we've talked about, we want to talk about the things that we've learned in personal branding, and that personally, like, I've learned and Michael's learned on this journey. That's one of the biggest lessons, is it doesn't matter if you're using Donald Miller's formula, Sun Yi's formula, whoever's formula that's out there.
You have to do it. Yeah.
You have to do it. And maybe you're taking pieces and parts from multiple
Yeah, and
people.
once you do it, I think you understand. Then those formulas actually help because you're like, oh, this is what he meant by this. This is, and then you can pick and choose what to use and what not to use, right?
Yes.
But you can't just follow. There's no step by step formula that you follow to success. If it was, everyone would be successful.
Exactly. Exactly. So I think that's like our lesson for the day. Like that's our thing for this episode is, dude, just do it. I know we've talked about that a lot before, but you just have to do. And then, like you said, refine. It's like do and refine, refine, and use the experts.
Yeah.
Use the experts to help in that like sanding of your message and like the refinement of the message. Even like email campaigns, like I can see which emails we use a certain tone. One's getting a 24% click rate and like the other one's getting 2%. Like
exactly.
What are
and then like you start playing it like, and then the next level is like, I know that if I have a mailing list that has 10,000 people, this works. But with a mailing list of 500,000 people, it doesn't work. It has to be different. Like those are the nuances that you can't learn unless you do it.
Unless you do it.
And those are the nuances why actually people pay me a lot of money to work with me, and they don't pay that guy from Fiverr to do it, because I've learned those nuances, and it really makes a difference.
Yes. Like you could look at the email campaign probably and be like, that's the problem. Like you could look at those two emails, but you know why? Because you've done it thousands of times.
It's not that in my head, I'm going like, okay, that doesn't fit in with this formula. Like I'm not thinking like that. You just feel it.
You just feel it. Even like, I remember one of the small things that you taught me was writing an email with contractions, like use contractions. So instead of saying like,
you will,
or we will, just talk, just make it much more conversational. And so every time I like will write something more formal, I'm like, what would Sun do? And it's like, so it's just an example of like when you work.
I should make a list of those kind of things actually, because those are things that people can apply right away.
Yeah. So actually you should. Because those
that can be like my PDF.
Yeah,
your PDF.
Your opt-in.
Yeah.
It can be your what's my mask. Yeah. Oh, you know what? I wonder if I never thought of it that way.com is available.
Look at you thinking like a marketer. Like,
that would be interesting.
And one thing I just realized is that both you and Michael come from like more of a B2B background. Do you know what I mean?
We do, yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
And that's why like most of the stuff that we're talking about is like mass market. It's B2C. You know what I mean? Like, because you can't, if you write emails like that, you can't do that to a B2B, because B2B, they want the information.
Yes.
So,
and that has been a struggle for us. Like just internally, it's like, you know what? We keep focusing on, we're trying to do something in a B2B way.
Yeah.
We need to focus and do it in more of a B2C way. We fought that battle. Like,
yeah.
And
there are certain things you have to do B2B, because if you're going after speaking engagements like keynote speaking then that has to be B2B, or press, press opportunity, B2B. And then when you're selling like your message, that's B2C.
Yep. And so when you have your foot in both worlds, like we do, it can feel really...
Is that confusing? Like confusing,
yeah.
I can see that. But yeah, I mean, you guys are like definitely, doing it, like learning from experience. I guess that should be our recap. Like, that's really the only way to learn. Like, there's no step-by-step guide to success. Even though like all the 7-figure income course people try to tell you, there's no secret to success.
They rented the Airbnb that they're like, the mansion that they're in is rented. The Porsche that they're driving is rented.
Yeah.
the girls that are in the video are being
Not to mention,
spoiler
like,
alert.
if that's what they're selling on, if you're trying to get somebody to motivate to build a successful business because they want to live in a mansion and drive a Ferrari and fly in a private jet, like, I can guarantee you somebody with that motive is not going to succeed. Do you understand what I mean? Like, that's already the wrong thing to sell on. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%. It's just every time I see those like YouTube ads, I crack up. Like, I'm like, kid, no, you're not going to sell me your course that's now 50% off.
Exactly. It's the only person that makes, it's like, the only person that makes money from that is that course creator, right? Like,
right.
Everybody else loses. So that, I mean, to me, that's a scam because,
of course.
It's
how many
like
of their people are actually actually making 7 figures?
Not like, probably, I mean, if they're going in with the motive of like, I want to fly in a private jet, probably zero, because if that's your goal, like, you're not going to put in the work. You're not going to, like,
Exactly.
I really hope that, like, sometime soon, or like in the next decade or something, like, they make some sort of a law or something, some sort of a regulation or something, so that, like, people can't do that, right? Because, like, people are getting scammed, and it's really sad to watch.
Yeah, they're being, like, sold
dreams,
a false sense of of like this dream of it's just a scam. And I don't know that people go into it like saying, you know what, I'm going to create this scam. I don't know if that's anyone's intention when they're making these courses, but
I think some of them are, but I think most of them are not. Yeah, you're right. That they truly believe that, or they're not even thinking that far, right? They saw some 6-figure, 7-figure income course that told them to do that. Now, so now they're going out and doing the same thing, and so on and so on and so on.
Yeah, and I think what you said, it's sad. Like, people must be buying it. Like, people must be.
They are
buying it, and
it's the reason why, like, you would think that, like, if you get those emails that says, like, they're like the prince of some country in Saudi Arabia to sell them, like, you would think that shit would never work, right?
I know.
But they do it because it works. Like, people are stupid. Yeah.
People are morons.
Okay.
Oh, man, son.
It's always a pleasure talking to you. I know you have your hands full there.
Hey. It's an exciting time in the Brody-Waite household, and I love talking to you. I hate that we missed last week, but it sounds like, from what I saw,
Michael was like dropping some knowledge bombs. It was
I can't compete with Michael.
He actually kind of like coached me. Like, it was kind of like an hour-long coaching session for me.
And he seemed so serious, like the parts that I saw.
Yeah.
I was like, man, you were very intense. And
I mean, we were talking about some intense shit, but
and that's
he didn't do the whole, like, the radio voice and
the funny part. Like, he actually is a funny person. But he was like, it was serious stuff. Like, Son and I were talking about some serious stuff. So I'll never be able to compete with the Brody-Waite, like, intensity and knowledge, like the profoundness that he always just like. I
mean, I think that's good, but people probably want to hear this too, like us just shooting the shit.
This is like a regular call. This is how Son and I like do a regular call, and then, like we've said before, then we'd be like, oh, hey, we need to do a little bit of work. Can I ask you, like, were you able to put this on the website? All right.
So we'll chat again. Yeah. Have fun with Wolfie and Emirat.
I will. Thank you so much. And
Tell Michael I said hi, and
I will.
We'll do it again next week.
Love you, son. See you next
Love
week.
you. Bye.
Bye.